Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report, your daily source of Black news, Black views, and Black opinions. Today is Monday, April 11th. I'm Mimi Brown.
I'm Romeo.
I'm Demi Lobo, and on today's report, Democratic lawmakers hope the confirmation of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson will give Biden some political momentum. This after many Democrats were left feeling disappointed by the Senate's inability to pass voting rights legislation or change the filibuster rule. Meanwhile, a black man on South Carolina's death row is asking the state Supreme Court to halt his execution until judges can decide if the method of his death is cruel and unusual punishment. His execution is set and scheduled for April 29th. Then, 5 officers in Inglewood, California, who were fired after fatally shooting a man and woman asleep in their car, are now suing for wrongful termination.
Plus, Chris Rock says the check needs to clear before he starts making jokes about Slapgate. And R&B singer, yes, R&B singer had to ghost Drake because of her jealous boyfriend. Yeah, we have all that and so much more. So Macy, this is our voice and our truth. So let's get it.
House Democrats are gearing up for a push to reach African-American voters in the run-up into the midterm elections. Starting in Northern Virginia this week, Democratic congressional campaign committees, they will roll out print and radio ads emphasizing policy achievements like the 2020 expanded child tax credit. They will also remind voters of the American Rescue Plan. Democrats are worried about losing congressional seats in areas that are purple, where heavy black turnout will help them protect those seats. The party will spend about $30 million around the nation mobilizing black voters who tend not to turn out during the midterm elections. I think this is a good thing. We need to definitely, mobilize black voters. But I also think we only tend to do this during midterm elections, right? We see them now, they're reaching out, they're coming to our neighborhoods, they're placing ads on, in black media, and they're trying to get our attention. Meanwhile, we're still waiting for the George Floyd and Policing Act to be passed. We're still waiting for the Voting Rights Act to be passed. Although House Democrats did pass it, it's still sitting somewhere stalled in the Senate. And so, the things that are essential to black lives are still not making it to the other side, to the White House for that signature. And so I think they need to kind of figure out what that looks like as they come to us and now need our votes once again.
It always happens this way. You think about it, if you look at the 87%, that's how black community felt about Joe Biden. Now it's down to 60%. That's a problem. Yeah. And part of the problem is those bills you were talking about, they're not getting pushed through, they're not happening. So there's a checklist that the black community and people of color are waiting on for Joe Biden to go push through, President Biden to push through, and it's not happening. Would that be a big issue coming into the midterms with the gas prices and things of that nature? What do you think about that, Demi?
Well, what I think about it, Romeo, is that it feels very performative, that like Mimi is saying here, that they only focus on our communities when it benefits them. And so this is great because it can be multi-beneficial, because a lot of times they only lean us when it's convenient, when you need us. Black people, we chose Joe Biden. We got Joe Biden to where he is right now. And so again, this is multi-beneficial. And so Detroit, for example, they're seeing more black voters than ever before. And so we're going to see that around the world. And so I'm happy that they're focusing it on us, but it should be around the globe. 365, focus on our communities because we are the people that have gotten a lot of politicians where they are today.
Agreed.
Meanwhile, Senate Republicans are vowing to push President Biden toward the center if they win back the majority in November. Republicans are feeling optimistic about their chances in November as Biden struggled to get a boost in the polls. The GOP message is an early warning sign of the potential gridlock and headaches that Biden could face in the second half of his term, especially if Democrats lose both the House and the Senate. It's still unclear what the GOP agenda would look like, as Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has repeatedly declined to share that. But in a recent interview, he pointed generally at a handful of issues that could be up for debate, like inflation, the border, crime, and domestic energy production.
But the confirmation of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson does give Biden a much-needed win. Democratic lawmakers heading into a tough midterm hope the victory will give Biden some political momentum. For months, Democrat lawyers have said that Biden could start solving some of his political problems by racking up more accomplishments in Congress. Last week, Biden scored one of the biggest wins of his presidency, delivering a campaign promise to put the first black woman on the Supreme Court. Biden watched the confirmation on television at the White House with Jackson by his side. Her confirmation comes after months of frustrating negotiations over the president's highly touted Build Back Better agenda, which stalled in December. Many Democrats were also left deeply disappointed by the state's inability to pass voting rights legislation or change the filibuster rule.
And 2 days after the 2020 election and days before all of the votes were counted, Donald Trump Jr. texts the White House Chief of Staff plans to ensure his father would get a second term. CNN is reporting that Don Jr. laid out ideas to Mark Meadows to keep his father in control. In the text, Trump said, quote, "It's very simple. We have multiple paths. We control them all." The text revealed the former president had plans to protest the results of the election even before the final votes were tallied.
An election lawsuit filed by Stacey Abrams in 2018 is currently on trial right now. So Abrams' organization, it's called Fair Fight Action. It alleges that Georgia officials grossly mismanaged the 2018 governor's race between Abrams and Brian Kemp. So this lawsuit alleges that the state deprived low-income and voters of color the right to vote. Election analysts say even if the U.S. District Court sides with Abrams' group, they doubt it will impact the upcoming governor's race. Now, Abrams is the only Democrat running this year. And meanwhile, Kemp, who is governor, is fighting off a challenge from former Georgia Senator David Perdue.
Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock could face a tough re-election bid. Political analysts say Warnock must get the kind of turn out that he needs in 2021 when he won a runoff election. An early poll says Warnock slightly trailing Republican Herschel Walker. If the two men were to meet in November, President Biden's low approval rating is a challenge to congressional Democrats. Warnock has supported the vast majority of President Biden's agendas.
And Maine is getting its first African-American state Supreme Court justice. The state's legislative panel confirmed Rick Lawrence to the High Court on Friday. Lawrence currently serves as deputy chief judge for the district court. Before becoming a judge, he worked as an attorney and a House counsel for disability insurer. Lawrence was nominated by former Governor Angus King, who now represents the state in the U.S. Senate.
New York State lawmakers are making it easier for judges to lock up people for minor theft as well as property crimes. The move comes as the state worked on the $220 billion budget on Friday. Many state lawmakers pushed Governor Kathy Hochul to repeal new bail measures that stopped courts from instituting bail on minor crimes. But moderates and conservatives on the state say those reforms have led to an increase in theft and other crimes. Now, some progressives in the state house say the rollbacks will hurt poor and people of color in the state.
A black man on South Carolina's death row is asking the state Supreme Court to halt his execution until judges can decide if the method of his death is cruel and unusual punishment. Richard Bernard Moore is set to die April 29th. He has until Friday to choose to die in an electric chair or be shot to death by a firing squad. If he chooses the firing squad, the state says 3 officers will stand behind a wall and fit their rifles through an opening. The 57-year-old Moore has been on death row since 2001 when he was convicted of killing a convenience store clerk, James Mahoney. His supporters say his crime did not rise to the level of a death penalty offense because he did not bring a gun into the store. Police say Moore was able to take a gun away from the store clerk and shoot him.
A Louisville activist accused of shooting a mayoral candidate is pleading not guilty to federal charges of attempted murder. Quintez Brown appeared in federal court on Friday. He's been charged with shooting Craig Greenberg at a campaign headquarters in February. Investigators say the bullet grazed Greenberg. Supporters of Brown say the prosecution is racially and politically motivated. They argue the case should be tried in state court like most shooting cases in Louisville. Brown's family says he suffers from mental illness.
And 2 former Charlotte teachers are filing a racial discrimination lawsuit against a historic landmark commission, claiming they were denied the chance to buy a historic school building. Tyson and Regina Bates want to buy the Torrance Little School and make it into a private school for poor children from the Charlotte area. Their lawsuit alleges the commission offered lower prices to white-owned groups. The couple says they had the property under contract twice before they were rejected. Now, commission officials have not commented on the accusations in this lawsuit.
A Texas district attorney says he will ask the judge to dismiss a murder charge against a Texas woman accused of self-induced abortion. Lizelle Herrera was arrested Thursday after a grand jury indicted her for murder for allegedly causing the death of an individual by self-induced abortion. The DA says he hopes dismissal of the charge makes it clear Herrera did not commit a criminal act under the laws of the state of Texas. Texas law exempts a woman from facing a homicide charge for ending her own pregnancy.
And people living in Miami, like the rest of us around the country, are dealing with sky-high rent prices. So politicians they're trying to do something to help. Miami-Dade County Mayor Daniela Canva says her office is accelerating measures to address the crisis. Mayor Canva says her office will provide $13 additional million to the county's rental assistance program. The average one-bedroom apartment in Miami is $2,500 a month.
A North Carolina grand jury has indicted a nurse who was working at a jail when officers restraining a black man killed him. But the grand jury failed to indict 5 former detention officers who were charged with involuntary manslaughter as they held down John Neville in 2019. Neville repeatedly yelled, "I can't breathe," as officers tried to remove his handcuffs. Investigators say the officers held down Neville face down on a mat. Michelle Huggins was employed as a private contractor at the jail, and her lawyer says Huggins was not responsible for Neville's death. An attorney says that the nurse never restrained Neville and provided CPR in an attempt to save him. This is an interesting story. There are 2 conversations that are happening right now. The first conversation, of course, coming from the black community, a black man killed at the hands of police in a jail. But what everybody really is talking about, I mean, this story is on TikTok, this story is on Twitter. Everybody's talking about the fact that the nurse is being charged and not the police officers. And so, I mean, everybody is upset. The nurses worldwide, they're coming together, they're forming, and they're making their videos like, I can't believe the nurse is being charged. But let us not forget that a black man was killed at the hands of police also. And so I don't want to sound insensitive to this woman, this female nurse, because it's unfair, but also I don't want that to overshadow the fact that a black man died at the hands of police in a jail. I don't want those two kind of cross over and one be more important than the other.
And you got to think about it again, like another black person saying, I can't breathe, and having to deal with this and go through this until their last breath. You see those 5 officers, this man was handcuffed. He could have been contained a different way. You could have set him up. So many other ways they could have handled this, but they did not do that. As a result, we lose yet another black man. And people are really upset. You're right, Demi. They're talking about the idea of, the nurse being charged, but the police not. Who's going to take accountability? When you look at that video, you see what's going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And then the officers in there, he kept saying, I can't breathe. And they kept saying, well, if you're talking, you can breathe. I mean, you can, just because someone has the breath, you don't know how much that takes for them to be able to say, I can't breathe. And what I found interesting about this is that the DA charged all the officers.
Yeah.
It was the grand jury that came back and said they declined to press charges, so they found enough evidence to bring the charges, but a grand jury somehow found enough charges just for the nurse and not for the officers who actually committed this
I mean, her
atrocity.
giving CPR means that she's pretty much the only person that even tried to remotely save his life.
Exactly.
And so it just really seems really unfair.
Absolutely.
All right, here's an update to a story we told you about last month. 5 Pittsburgh officers were fired for their part in the tasing death of a black man. They're now appealing the decision. Pittsburgh Mayor Ed Gainey announced their firings. The cops arrested 54-year-old Jim Rogers after they were called about a stolen bike. Rogers was tased at least 8 times within 3 minutes last October. Cops were called to the scene for a report of a stolen bike. A police review board report says Rogers begged for help in the squad car for 17 minutes. Rogers died the next day at a local hospital. Police told investigators they tased Rogers because he would not do as he was told. A medical examiner says Rogers died because of a lack of oxygen to his brain. When the mayor fired the cops, he gave them the option or to retire or appeal. Rogers' family says they want criminal charges filed against the officers.
And no charges for Inglewood officers involved in the fatal shooting of a man and a woman asleep in their car. In February of 2016, police found Keisha Michael and Mark Quinton Sandlin asleep in their car. They say they saw a gun on Michael's lap. Police say they used their sirens, air horns, and flashing lights to wake the two. When that didn't work, they bumped the car with an armored truck. Eventually, Sandlin woke up and drove his car forward, bumping a police cruiser. An officer said he saw Sandlin reach for the gun and opened fire. 5 out of the 5 of the officers were fired and are suing for wrongful termination. In 2018, the city of Inglewood paid $8.6 million to settle a wrongful lawsuit. There's so many things wrong with this story.
Yeah.
So many things.
Agreed.
You know, these two were out on a date. You know, it's unclear why they fell asleep in their car, but to be woken up by a hail of bullets is just, you know, I just don't even have the words to understand how that happened.
How it even got to
How
that
it even got there. But let me just say this. These officers who were now fired, they're also suing for racial discrimination because they lost their job, right? They're suing because they're white. And they said that because they were white, they lost their job, not because they did something wrong, right? And so that's the other issue. And then the other issue is that George Gaston, he campaigned on turning around, fighting the cases that Jackie Lacey wouldn't fight. And so this is really going to be a really big issue for him. And, you know, it's just really, really unfortunate. Once again, here we are talking about no charges being filed for people losing their life.
I agree. And, you know, it's such a sad situation. And if you're awakened, if you're falling asleep in the neighborhood for whatever reason, right, they're out having a good time. But, you know, he was startled probably when he was awakened. He saw that was going on, so he maybe jumped the gun situation. You know, no pun intended with that. But it shouldn't have resulted in them losing their lives. There's other ways you could have stopped that vehicle. You could have waited that out because they were not a threat if they were there asleep. Yes, there was a gun on his lap, but there's other ways to approach that, and you're trained to do better, but yet it still didn't happen.
Absolutely.